Welcome to Dexon Photography. Some days ago we took a look at the Fuji X100T, the mirrorless camera by Fuji, and today I have another Fuji camera here with me, and I want to take a look at the images from the Fuji XT2 and compare it to the images of the Canon 6D. Now I have here a portrait session, you could call it. There are only portrait pictures here. And we can just take a look at some of the images and compare it to the Canon 6D. These images are mixed. And yeah, let's go right into it. So for example, this image was taken with the Canon 6D 50mm 1.8. And it's actually nearly unedited. That's before and this is the after. And when we can take a look at the same image with the Fuji. This is the Fuji, the XT2, 56mm, and this is also before and after. And I think there is not much difference in terms of look. It's nearly the same look. If you wouldn't know I had two cameras with me, you probably wouldn't even have noticed that there's a Canon and a Fuji camera. Now, the 50mm is always the Canon version, Canon 6D, and the 56mm is the Fuji. So let's just go through some of these images. I edited these images, but only to give it a different look. So you see before on the left and after on the right. And sometimes even the before look better. That might be the case, depending on which color you like more. Now this is the Canon 50mm on the full frame camera. And I just go through it. And now we can take a look at the same situation with the Fuji. This is now the Fuji 56mm at f1.2, and you see the way I edited it, it looks really similar to the Canon version, which I find really interesting that these images look so alike. Here we have a different person. This is also straight from the camera, unedited, with the 50mm 1.8 at 2.5 on the 6D. And I really like the Canon images. It's a really cheap lens, 100 euros only, and it's a really great lens. I find it to be one of the best lenses, and I made more images with this lens than with any other lens. And this is the Fuji again. And so just from colors, I think they look really similar. Back to the Canon, onto the Fuji. Fuji, let me just do it like this. And so now this is the Fuji. So when we take a look at this, it's also unedited, and compare it maybe to this one. I think it looks really similar, even though there are two different camera models by two different brands. This is also the Fuji. You always see it here. 56 means it's the Fuji lens. And when we compare this image to maybe this one from the same person, it has a really similar look. Now, the 50mm on the Canon is a 50mm focal length, and the 56mm on the Fuji is actually about 80mm, because it's an APS-C sensor. And you see I nearly shoot, or mostly shoot, wide open or nearly wide open. Again, the Fuji, this is not totally in focus, but I think this is fine. And these are images straight from the camera. So this is what you can get straight from the camera without any editing. And it actually looks like the Canon files to me. And I just wanted to show you my experience with the camera, the Fuji XT2. I had it for about a weekend with two lenses, the 56mm 1.2 and the 14mm wide angle lens 2.8. And in this section, I only want to talk about portraits, not about landscape or architecture. Okay, so let's just go on. Here we have the Fuji XT2 14mm. There's also a picture of me. It's a little bit too yellow, I think. Too warm, a little bit too much saturation. And I think this is also a nice example. Here we have, again, the Fuji XT2. And then next to it, images with the Canon 6D. Now this is the Canon 6D. And when we just take a look maybe at this image and then at this image, I think the result looks really similar. So I wouldn't have noticed that these images were taken with two different cameras, two different systems, APS-C system, full frame. Now you see a really blurry background here, so I really like the Canon cameras, the Canon 6D especially, that I use every day. And even the 50mm lens, which only costs 100 euros, it's really sharp, it's always in focus, it gives me great images, it's very light, it only weighs 170 grams, so there is, to me, I don't have any reason to change systems. But I am also interested in new things, new technologies, new cameras, so that's why I will also test different models, camera models. Now, on to the next situation. Leslie, the dancer here, just made a dance session with people, an open event where everybody could come and dance. And I now had the 135mm lens. I use it mostly at f2.0. And let's take a look at these images. Now this lens I really love to use. It's my most used wedding lens, the 135mm lens, because I can catch moments from further away without needing to interact with it, so I can keep the intimacy of the moment. If a couple is laughing and joking and looking at each other, I want to capture that intimacy. I don't want them to look at me. I want them to enjoy the moment, and that's really great with telephoto lenses. Now I think on the Fuji, the 90mm lens would probably give a very similar look and similar quality. I didn't have it, I only had the 56mm, and we will look at images from that camera lens as well. Now again, on the left it's before, on the right it's after. I don't think these images differentiate very much, so I could have left all images unedited and it would be fine. But I like to edit them, and I edit them very fast, it's very quick. Every image is edited in a couple of seconds, so and it has a different look, and not very much different, but it's different. Now we're still with the Canon 135mm at f2.0, and let's just take a look at some more images, and then we will take a look at the Fuji images. So let me just see, just some more. So the people don't really realize that I took pictures of them, which is nice. So they are really authentic. They are not interrupted by me, the photographer. I just capture the moment as it really is. There's nothing fake about it, and this is what I also like to do on weddings. When the bride is talking to her best friend or mother, and you can get really nice images without any energy to put into it, because the moment itself has so much energy, you don't need to change anything. Now we're still on the 135mm lens, and here you see how great the bokeh looks like, even at f2.0. In movement, it focuses really on point. And I think, let me just see where the Fuji begins. Still the Canon, also Canon. Okay, now here somewhere, maybe here. This is the Fuji 56mm, and just from the look, I think the images look really similar. Before and after. Also here I shot nearly or mostly wide open f1.2, because I wanted to see, is it possible to shoot the Fuji wide open in movement, because that's what I usually do. And so I tested it at f1.2, f1.4, f2.0, and I think it performed really well as well. Now this is not in focus, but many images are in focus, and so I'm also really happy with this lens. And just from an editing standpoint, the cameras actually I don't feel any difference. I can edit the Canon files like the Fuji and the Fuji like the Canon. And you see, if you wouldn't know which camera I used here, you probably wouldn't see it just from the images. And it's just one series. So again, let's take a look before and after. Now, sometimes even the before images I like more. Now, this one I like more than this one. Maybe this one as well. But it has a certain look that I think really fit the moment. And am I switching to Fuji? No, I'm really happy with the Canon equipment I have, the Canon 6D. It is a fabulous camera system. The lenses are great. The camera has taken nearly 700,000 images, one camera. I never got it cleaned. So as Canon is doing me so good, just this camera, there's no reason for me to switch. But I also bought a Fuji XT2 just a week ago, and I am going to test other cameras just to experience or experiment. And I want you to take part in this adventure. Now here again, I have the 50mm on the Canon 6D, and here the Fuji. Now this is the Fuji, this is the Canon, and I don't think just from the look that it's really different. Even the colors look really similar. And so in the end, I think every camera system today will give you great images. In the end, it's always the moment that makes the image. If these people wouldn't be dancing here, there would be nothing that I could photograph or not take so many photographs of. And I still like the Canon 6D with the 50mm lens, the 135mm lens as well. And I will stick to it, but I will also get into other systems, and I will let you take part in it by doing these videos. And if you like it, you can comment below it. You can ask me questions about it. And in the next video, we will take a look at the architecture and landscape photography with the XT2.